Madison Square Garden, New York City, September 7th, 2001. The air inside the legendary arena crackled with anticipation. 20,000 souls filled every available seat, their collective energy vibrating through the cavernous space like a living entity. This was the second night of Michael Jackson's special 30th anniversary celebration concerts, events that had drawn celebrities, dignitaries, and fans from across the globe to witness the king of pop's triumphant return to the stage after years of relative seclusion. The anticipation had built to an almost unbearable intensity. The house lights dimmed, plunging the arena into darkness. A hush fell over the crowd, 20,000 people collectively holding their breath. The silence stretched, 1 second becoming 5, 5 becoming 10. Then, a single beam of light pierced the blackness, finding and illuminating a solitary figure at center stage. Michael Jackson stood motionless, head bowed, wearing a crystallized military-style jacket that caught and refracted the light in dazzling patterns across the darkened arena. For a full 15 seconds, he remained perfectly still, allowing the moment to build, understanding instinctively the power of anticipation. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his head. The roar that erupted was physical, a wall of sound so powerful it seemed to compress the air itself. Michael absorbed it, his face betraying no emotion save for a slight, almost imperceptible softening around his eyes, his private acknowledgement of this tsunami of adoration. When he finally moved, it was with the liquid precision that had become his hallmark, each gesture a perfect fusion of technical mastery and emotional expression. The opening notes of Billie Jean sliced through the crowd noise, and the audience erupted again, recognizing instantly the iconic bass line that had changed the landscape of popular music forever. Michael moved through the choreography with effortless precision, each step, spin, and gesture executed with the perfection of an artist who had spent tens of thousands of hours honing his craft to its sharpest edge. The audience responded to every movement, every vocal nuance, creating a feedback loop of energy between performer and spectators that elevated the performance beyond mere entertainment into something approaching transcendence. Madonna, seated in the front row, watched with an expression of undisguised awe. Across the aisle, Steven Spielberg leaned forward, completely absorbed. Even hardened security personnel, veterans of countless concerts, found themselves stealing glances at the stage, drawn irresistibly to the phenomenon unfolding before them. Then, as Michael prepared to transition into the song's second chorus, something unprecedented happened. From the left side of the arena, section 115, row M, seat 7, a voice cut through a momentary lull in the music, slurred, hostile, unmistakably intoxicated. "You're a fraud," the voice shouted. "Overrated." The words hung in the air, an ugly discord in the symphony of adoration. A ripple of shock passed through the nearby audience members. Security personnel immediately began moving toward the disturbance. On stage, Michael faltered, just for a millisecond, a barely perceptible hesitation that only those who had studied his performances with religious devotion would have noticed. His eyes flickered toward the source of the disruption, then back to center. The music continued. The man, emboldened perhaps by the attention or driven by whatever demons had led him to this act of public hostility, continued his heckling. "Anyone could do what you do," he shouted, the words slurred but still cutting. "Nothing special." By now, security had nearly reached him. The surrounding audience members had created a bubble of space around the man, their expressions a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and growing anger on behalf of their idol. What happened next would become one of the most shared, analyzed, and discussed moments in performance history. Instead of ignoring the heckler or allowing security to remove him, Michael raised his hand, stopping the approaching security personnel with a simple gesture. The musicians, consummate professionals, continued playing, but Michael himself stopped dancing. He stood perfectly still, center stage, the spotlight creating a halo effect around his slender frame. Then, with deliberate movements, he walked to the edge of the stage, closer to the section where the heckler continued his drunken tirade. The audience fell silent, uncertain what was unfolding, the atmosphere charged with tension. Michael removed his earpiece, signaling to the band to bring the volume down. The music softened to a gentle underscore, the famous bass line continuing, but muted now, a heartbeat beneath the sudden, expectant silence. "I see you," Michael said, his voice soft yet somehow carrying to every corner of the massive arena. "I hear you." The heckler, suddenly the focus of 20,000 pairs of eyes, fell silent, his bravado withering under the collective gaze of the crowd. "And I understand," Michael continued. "Sometimes, the pain inside us looks for ways to escape. Sometimes it comes out as anger toward others." The arena was utterly still now, the audience collectively holding its breath. "I felt that pain too," Michael said, his voice gaining strength but never losing its gentleness. "Music has always been my way of transforming it into something else, into something that might bring joy instead of pain, unity instead of division." He paused, his gaze still directed toward the heckler, but somehow embracing the entire arena in his address. "Tonight, I'd like to try something different, something we haven't rehearsed." He turned to his band, giving them a subtle nod. The musicians, though clearly surprised, trusted their leader implicitly. The music shifted, transitioning into the opening notes of "Man in the Mirror," a song not on the planned set list for the evening. As the familiar introduction played, Michael turned back toward the audience, toward the heckler specifically. "This song is for you," he said. "Not because you need to hear it more than anyone else, but because I think right now you might feel it more deeply." And then he began to sing. From the first note, it was clear that this was not merely a performance. Each word seemed to emerge not just from his vocal cords, but from some deeper well of emotion. The lyrics about making a change and starting with oneself took on a new, immediate resonance in the context of this unexpected moment of human connection. As the song built toward its powerful bridge, Michael gestured toward the heckler, then opened his arms wider, embracing the entire arena in the gesture. "Stand with me," he invited. "Not just physically, but with your hearts." Throughout the arena, people began to rise. First those immediately surrounding the heckler, then rippling outward like a wave, section by section, until all 20,000 attendees were on their feet. The heckler himself remained seated at first, his face a conflicted mask of emotions. Embarrassment, lingering anger, but also something else now, a dawning wonder of being directly addressed by the very object of his scorn. Then, as the chorus swelled and Michael's voice soared with the signature passion that had made him the defining vocalist of his generation, the heckler slowly, almost involuntarily, rose to his feet as well. As the song reached its emotional peak, with the choir joining in and Michael's voice transcending the merely human, something remarkable happened. The heckler's face crumpled, the hostility replaced by naked emotion. Tears streamed down his face, visible to those around him and captured by several phones filming the extraordinary moment. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of profound silence. Not the anticipatory silence of the concert's beginning, but something deeper, a collective processing of what had just been witnessed. Then the applause began. It started slowly, almost reverently, then built to a thunderous crescendo that seemed to make the very foundations of Madison Square Garden tremble. In the midst of this, the heckler stood, weeping openly, his earlier hostility transformed into its opposite. Those around him, strangers just moments before, placed supportive hands on his shoulders. One woman offered him a tissue, another a bottle of water. What could have been an ugly moment of conflict had been transformed through Michael's response into a demonstration of the very themes his music had always championed: healing, unity, and the power of human connection. Later, as Michael prepared to continue with the planned set list, he paused once more. "Each of us," he said, his voice gentle but carrying clearly through the now silent arena, "is fighting a battle that others know nothing about. Tonight, let's be kind to each other's wounds." The concert resumed, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. The already exceptional performance had transcended into something else, a shared experience of vulnerability and connection that transcended the normal boundaries between performer and audience, between strangers in a crowd. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more moments that define the king of pop's extraordinary journey. The remainder of the concert unfolded with an intensity and emotional resonance that even veteran attendees of Michael's performances found unprecedented. Songs that have been heard countless times before seemed newly minted, infused with an authenticity and presence that transformed the familiar into the extraordinary. When the final encore concluded and the house lights came up, the audience lingered, reluctant to break the spell of what they had experienced. The story might have ended there, an exceptional moment in an exceptional concert, remembered by those who witnessed it, but eventually fading into the vast catalog of Michael Jackson performance lore. But technology intervened to write a different ending. Several audience members had captured the interaction on their phones. Within hours, clips began appearing on the nascent social media platforms of the early 2000s. By morning, the footage had been picked up by major news outlets. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed by over 30 million people worldwide. The comment sections overflowed with reactions, many from people describing how the footage had moved them to tears, had inspired them to reach out to estranged family members, had given them a new perspective on conflict resolution. The moment had resonated far beyond the bounds of celebrity news or entertainment reporting, touching something universal about human vulnerability and the healing power of empathy. Psychologists wrote analyses of the interaction, noting how masterfully Michael had de-escalated the situation while simultaneously validating the heckler's humanity. Conflict resolution experts pointed to it as a textbook example of transforming hostility through unexpected compassion. Educators incorporated the clip into lessons about emotional intelligence and empathy. 1 week after the concert, a letter arrived at Michael's office. It was from the heckler, a 37-year-old man named Thomas Warren. In the letter, which Michael's estate would later share with his permission, Thomas explained the personal crisis that had preceded his outburst: a painful divorce, the loss of his job, and a battle with alcohol that had left him filled with a directionless anger that had found its target in Michael that night. "I came to your concert full of bitterness," he wrote. "I was looking for reasons to hate what everyone else loved, because I couldn't bear to connect with anything positive. But when you spoke to me, not at me, but to me, something broke open inside me. For the first time in months, I felt seen as a person, not just judged for my actions." Thomas went on to explain that the moment had become a turning point for him. The morning after the concert, he had called his estranged sister, his first step toward rebuilding the connections his anger had severed. He had also attended his first AA meeting, beginning the journey toward sobriety. "You could have had me thrown out," the letter concluded. "You could have humiliated me the way I tried to humiliate you. Instead, you showed me a different way to respond to pain. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that moment." Michael responded personally to the letter, beginning a correspondence that would continue privately for years, out of the public eye. He invited Thomas to another concert the following year, this time as his guest in the VIP section. Photos from that night show a transformed Thomas, clear-eyed, smiling, 1 year sober, meeting Michael backstage, both men embracing like old friends. The moment at Madison Square Garden became part of Michael Jackson's legacy, not just as an entertainer of unparalleled technical skill, but as a human being capable of extraordinary empathy and emotional intelligence. In an industry often defined by ego and spectacle, he had demonstrated that true star power lies not just in the ability to command attention, but in the choice of what to do with that attention once it's been granted. In later interviews, when asked about the incident, Michael would usually smile softly and deflect, uncomfortable with the way his response had been elevated to something heroic. "I just did what felt right in the moment," he would say. "We're all just people trying our best. Sometimes we need to be reminded of that, me included." The video of that moment continued to circulate for years, experiencing periodic viral resurgences whenever social tensions or celebrity conflicts dominated the news cycle. It became a touchstone, a reference point for how confrontation could be transformed through empathy, how a potential moment of ugliness could be alchemized into something beautiful and healing. In 2023, Thomas Warren, 22 years sober and now working as a counselor for others battling addiction, was interviewed for a documentary about transformative moments in musical history. People sometimes ask if I'm embarrassed that my worst moment has been viewed by millions, he said. But I don't see it that way. What they're watching isn't just my worst moment. They're watching the exact second my life began to change for the better. They're watching what happens when hatred meets compassion and loses. He held up a small frame containing his 20-year sobriety chip alongside a handwritten note of congratulations from Michael, sent shortly before the singer's death. How could I possibly be embarrassed by that? In the vast and complex legacy of Michael Jackson, the Madison Square Garden moment stands as a testament to an aspect of his character that sometimes got lost amidst the spectacle and controversy of his unprecedented fame. His fundamental belief in the power of human connection, his conviction that music could be not just entertainment, but a force for transformation, both personal and collective. If you've been moved by this glimpse into the power of compassion and music to transform even the most difficult situations, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we keep alive not just the memory of Michael's unparalleled artistic gifts, but the spirit of empathy and connection that informed his greatest moments. Today, a small display in the Michael Jackson Memorial Museum contains artifacts from that night. The crystallized jacket he wore, setlist showing the last-minute edition of Man in the Mirror, and, most poignantly, a dual display containing both Thomas's original letter and a private note Michael had written to himself that was found in his journal after the concert. The note, written in Michael's distinctive handwriting, reads simply, "Remember Thomas. Remember that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer each other is to truly see the pain behind the anger. Remember that music can build bridges across the deepest divides, but only if we're brave enough to sing across the gap first." Visitors to the museum often linger at this display, many wiping away tears as they read the exchange between these two men whose lives intersected in a moment of conflict that transformed into connection. Their story, brief but profound, serves as a reminder of what becomes possible when we respond to hostility not with matching anger, but with a more challenging, more powerful force of compassion. In a world increasingly defined by division and conflict, perhaps that is Michael Jackson's most enduring legacy. The demonstration that even in our most public moments, it is our humanity, our willingness to see and honor the humanity in others, that has the power to truly break the internet and, more importantly, to break through the barriers that separate us from each other.